So, dear students, today we will be discussing about your chapter Diversity in Living World. So, first of all, you need to know what the term diversity means. So, diversity directly means the wide range of living organisms. Huge variety of living organisms, plants as well as animals present in this universe is called diversity. How diversity came, we have already seen. We have discussed about the origin of life when Earth was formed by, the Big Bang theory. The atmospheric conditions were very different. There were poisonous gases like ammonia, methane, hydrogen gas, and water was available as water vapors. And there was a chemical reaction between these compounds. The energy was provided by lightning, which occurred at that time because of the condensation and evaporation process. And the lightning gave the energy for the chemical reactions between these gases, and organic compounds were formed. And then when organic compounds organized to form the unicellular organisms, and from unicellular organisms there was colony formation, organisms came together, then there occurred division of labor, and different group of cells took up different functions. So cells joined to form a particular organism called multicellular organisms. And then of course the theory of natural selection given by Charles Darwin, who suggested how variations occur every generation. When one organism produces another one, there occurs variations, and the variations goes on continuously generation after generation, and the variations accumulate to convert a species into another species. And that is how a type of organism changed into second type, second into third type, third into fourth type. What basically we know with one term called evolution. The evolution is the slow transformation from one organism to another. And that has resulted over these 4.55 billion years. And that has resulted into a wide range of organisms which is available now in this universe that we call as diversity. Now the thing is, we need to study all these organisms. We always need to study all these living organisms. Now students keep asking, why should we study all these? Unnecessary, so much load is given. We need to remember so much characters. But the thing is, the necessity for humankind, mankind, all over the universe, you need to understand that until and unless we will know about all these organisms, the knowledge has helped us to discover, actually, we can say, large variety of food available. Because we have studied these organisms, we have found out in what way these organisms are helpful, and we have found that we can use them as cereals, as pulses. There are plants from which we can extract oil. There are plants which gives us spices to make the food tastier. So how we came to know all this? Only because we have studied them, is it not? And then the knowledge also has helped us to find out various types of medicines. In the total Ayurveda industry, the homeopathic industries, thousands of medicines are extracted from these plants, and we have been able to extract them only because we have studied about them. We have found out what is useful for them, which extract from which plants is used to kill bacteria, to kill fungus. Just now we have gone through the corona pandemic, and we have talked about a extract or a juice from a plant called giloy. So how did we come to know? Only because we have studied the things present in them, how they can be beneficial to us. So that is how the study is helpful always. The third thing is, whatever living organisms we are studying, the plants and the wildlife, the animals for that matter, are actually a part of the food chain. Food chain is a natural process by which all the living organisms other than green plants, they obtain their food. The herbivores obtain the food from plants, the carnivores from the herbivores, and the chain goes on. So we need to preserve them, because if any one group is being damaged and that is a food of other organisms, that organism will also be disturbed. Like if we check the population of mosquitoes completely, then the frogs and other lizards will have a shortage of food, the carnivores, which depends on them, and that will result in the population of the other organism which depends on the frogs. The whole balance will be disturbed. So we need to preserve each one. आपने पढ़ा है, we have talked about conservation of forests, conservation of wildlife. How do we talk about them? Why do we need to conserve them? Because they are beneficial, they are playing a role in maintaining the balance in nature. Plus, unless and until we study them, the data over the years, we will come to know. We have seen that we have talked about the endangered species, the vulnerable species, the rare species, which species to look after, which must be taken care of for the benefit of whole mankind, for the benefit of maintaining the balance in nature. So that is the basic thing, why we need to study all the living organisms. पहली बात तो उनका स्टडी करना जरूरी है, but the range is so huge, so many animals and plants present in this universe. It is just difficult. It is completely difficult to study each living organism individually. एक एक करके हर एक के बारे में स्टडी कर लेना is just difficult, impossible to study these 25 millions, 30 million type of organisms one by one. That is just impossible. So there comes, so there occurred actually a need for what we call as a process of classification. Classification is a method of grouping organisms, making groups of organisms on the basis of the similarity in their characters. Every organism has certain characters based on which it is surviving, it is living in this universe. So there are a lot of organisms which have similar type of characters. So if they have similarity in characters, they will be kept in one group. If there is difference in characters, another group will be made, a different group will be made. So like that, if hundreds and thousands of organisms are kept in one group, and now we study the character of this group. Just say if you want to study 5 characters of hundreds of organisms, 5 characters of each, you need to study 500 characters, But if the hundreds are kept in one group, now you should study 5 characters of this group, only 5. Remembering 5 characters will help you to understand the 5 characters of all the organisms of this group. So the classification makes the study easier. It makes the study easier. And there was a need for classification of making groups. So scientists understood the fact that we need to study each one of the organisms living in this universe, and it is impossible to study them separately. So let us classify them into groups so that our study becomes easier. Now, There was a step-by-step classification method made and name of groups given. Name of groups given. If you start from the basic thing, they say each type of organism present is definitely called as a species. Each type is different, like human beings. Now, when I say human beings of entire world, all are same, all have a basic character. So we know they are human beings. So human beings is one species. Cats, dogs, mango tree, banyan tree, coconut tree, whatever name you give, the name is unique. By hearing the name, you understand we are talking about a particular kind of organism, living organism. So that one particular type of living organism is a species. If I say there are 25 to 30 million type of organisms in this universe, very clearly we are talking about 25 to 30 millions of species present in this universe. एक रफ एस्टिमेट में दे रहा है, परफेक्ट फिगर मेरे पास नहीं है कि what is the exact number of living organisms present in this universe, but the number is huge. I am just giving a figure to indicate that 30 million is a huge number. So now the problem was we have to study all these 30 million types of organisms separately one by one, and we understood that this process is difficult. So what to do? These are the different types of species. If I start writing each species as a S, so I have to write 30 million S. So it was difficult, so what we did, we selected several species which had similarity in characters and made a group. That was a group of what we call as similar species. The species which were similar to each other, and we gave the name genus. Group of similar species, let's say lion is a species, tiger is a species, leopard is a species. They are different, but there are similarities between lion, tiger, leopard, the basic body design, the habitat, the dental formula, the canines they have, the way they eat their food, they are predators. So a lot of characters are similar. So based on that similarity in characters, we considered those species which were similar and made a group of them. That the higher group was called as genus. So there were many genuses formed. And we went on doing this, then we made a group of similar genus and we called it family. The name of that group. So a lot of families were made, and then we made a group of similar families, and the name was given as order. So a lot of orders were made. Then we made a group of similar orders, what was called as classes. Many classes were made. Then we did the group of similar classes. The group of similar classes were called as phylum or division. Both you can use. Phylum generally used for animals. Division is the term used for in plant kingdom. So when this phylum and division, the group of similar phylum was made, we called it as kingdom. So what was the benefit of this? This is step-by-step classification. You can see from here to here. This step-by-step classification is actually called as hierarchy of classification. There were several stages, We started from species, then we classified them into genus. Definitely, when large number of species are grouped in one genus, what will happen? The number of genus was less than species. Then many genuses were kept in a family. So the number of the groups went on decreasing. As I can clearly tell you, today we are talking about 5 kingdoms. And we started from where? So in 9th standard, don't get much frightened about it, and you have to study the characteristics of these 5 kingdoms, because there are 5 groups of organisms according to their similarity in characters that we have made. So I was just introducing you the terms, the terms called species, genus, family, order, class, phylum. But basically we will start our study from the kingdom. What are the various kingdoms? Kingdom मतलब क्या? Group of organisms. Phylum, group of organisms. Kingdom is a group of organisms which includes largest number of organisms. Species is a group which has the least number of organisms. यानी species group जो है उसमें केवल एक ही तरह के organism थे. अगर genus में जाएंगे तो genus is a group having 5 to 10 type of species, so 5 to 10 type of organisms. So large number of organisms is present only in kingdom, the least number of organisms species. So this was the step-by-step classification and the terms that we are going to study. If I talk about there are 5 kingdoms, very clearly each kingdom has many phylums, each phylum has many classes, each class has many orders, and that is how we study them. Now talking about the classification that we follow today, the 5 kingdom classification was given by a scientist, Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, Whittaker, Whittaker gave this 5 kingdom classification. It is the latest one. If I give you a certain gist that the first attempt, the first attempt of the classification was given by the great man. We call him the father of biology, Aristotle. Aristotle was the man who tried to classify the living organisms into groups for the first time, and he classified according to habitat. You can understand habitats like aquatic, terrestrial, something like that, aerial and all. मतलब he took the similar, आप बोले ना group बनाने का मतलब क्या होता है कि in the group will keep all the organisms which are similar in characters. Aristotle thought very basically that all the organisms which live in water is a common character, so he made that group. The organisms which are found in dry lands, on dry lands, terrestrial, animals which spend most of their time in air, aerial, ऐसा उन्होंने group बनाया. But the basic idea was not solved. This was cancelled, not accepted. Why? Because when you talk about classification, मैंने पहले बताया आपको कि all the organisms in a group must have similarity of characters. All the organisms must have similar characters if they are kept in one group. But when you see in aquatic group there were insects, there were fish, there was crocodile, there was blue whale, there were dolphins, fishes, a huge number. All these organisms that I have just not named, they are very different from each other. So how can you make a group of different type of organisms? So that is why the idea was cancelled. Then came a scientist called Carolus Linnaeus. Little bit meaningful. He made 2 kingdoms. Classified in all the living organisms into just 2 groups, main groups. The plantae and animalia. Based on certain characters, he named that all the living organisms should be either plant or animal. And for a good number of years, this classification was accepted by all. But there are a lot of such organisms came. All the plants, animals, एक basic difference आपको भी पता है कि organisms in which the cells have cell wall, the organisms in which cytoplasm contains chloroplast, they are plant. The organisms in which the cell does not possess cell wall, there is no chloroplast, they are heterotrophic, they are called animals. But then certain other type of organisms were discovered, were found out in the universe, which neither had the character of plant nor had the character of animals. So where to keep them? Then there came the tendency of making other groups, and ultimately, apart from these 2 kingdoms, there were in the beginning 3 kingdoms made, then 4 kingdoms made, and slowly increasing as the different kind of organisms were getting discovered day by day, and at last we came to this, and we have settled down here now as the 5 kingdom classification. How he made these 5 kingdoms? He considered all the living organisms present in this universe. We are talking about Whittaker, and he first classified them into 2 categories: all the organisms which were prokaryotes and those which were eukaryotes, were separated from each other. Very different characters. Prokaryotes आपने पढ़ा है first chapter में कि the organism in which cells has a poorly developed nucleus, they are called prokaryotes. So all such organisms were kept together. It's a simple group. It was not very difficult to study. So he named this as a group, separate group, called as the first kingdom, kingdom 1. He named that kingdom as Monera. Then the eukaryotic organisms were huge in number, so such a large group it was very difficult to study once again. So he classified it more, and he separated from the eukaryotes all those organisms which were unicellular into a separate group, and those which were multicellular in a separate group. And the unicellular organisms was a bit shorter, so he named it a second kingdom, called it as Protista. We'll study about all these again, don't worry. Then came the multicellular organisms, which were he classified them into all the multicellular eukaryotic organisms into 2 more groups: those which had cell wall and which had no cell wall, into 2 different groups. ऐसे ऑर्गेनिज्म जिनके सेल के बाहर हमेशा सेल वॉल हुआ करता था, उनको एक ग्रुप में डाला गया, और जो नो सेल वॉल था, that was clear cut named as Animalia. Those which had cell wall, उसमें भी बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस पाया गया. क्या आप समझेंगे? There were some organisms in which cell wall was made of chitin, and there were some in which the cell wall was made of cellulose. Pehla difference. One more difference was that such organisms in which the cell wall was made of chitin, they lacked chloroplast. उनमें chloroplast नहीं था, and यहाँ chloroplast was present. Chloroplast present. So he made 2 more groups. This group was called as fungi, which had cell wall made up of chitin, and there was no chloroplast. And the other organism in which the cell wall was made up of cellulose and always contained chloroplast. Matlab they were autotrophic. They were capable of carrying out photosynthesis. So they were called as plantae. So kingdom 1, kingdom 2, kingdom 3, kingdom 4, and the kingdom 5. At last we have settled down here as these are the 5 kingdoms called Monera, all prokaryotes; Protista, eukaryote but unicellular; and then the 3 kingdoms, which are all the 3 are multicellular and eukaryote, but there were certain differences based on which fungi, plant and animalia, 3 more kingdoms are made. So in our next video we'll talk about the characteristic features of these 5 kingdoms, the organisms which are present in these groups, in these kingdoms. What are the basic characters that they possess, and what are the differences between one kingdom and the next kingdom. Is that clear? Thank you.